On today's show, has Steve Kerr lost the Golden State Warriors locker room? And if so, should the Warriors look to replace him to salvage this season as soon as possible? Draymond Green set to make his return from his indefinite suspension after 12 games served, and Chris Paul out for the next 4 to 6 weeks with a hand injury. It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event, right? You're trying to go out and have a good time. You don't want to be stressed about the ticket buying experience. GameTime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events happening near you. GameTime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. They've got all-in prices, and they show you your price all the way up front, right? I don't know about you. My least favorite thing when I'm buying tickets is to go through the whole process and then get to the very end when I'm trying to check out, and then suddenly I'm paying like an extra $100 in convenience fees and handling fees and digital ticket fee. It's the worst. GameTime has their all-in price, so you know exactly what you're paying up front. No hidden fees, none of that. They're obsessed with finding you ways to help save money on tickets. They've got so many killer deals that you want to take advantage of. Flash deals, last-minute deals, all the way up to and including after the start time of your event. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Warriors, Cyrus Saatsaz. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. Just search Locked On Warriors. Fresh off the heels of what is, I guess, another in a trend of disappointing losses for the Warriors this season. A 133-118 loss to the Toronto Raptors. And Cyrus, a little bit of maybe Warriors headline roulette here. We've got, Draymond Green's suspension being lifted after 12 games. We've got Chris Paul out for 4 to 6 weeks with the hand injury. But where I want to start is Steve Kerr, because it kind of feels like with some reporting going on around the scenes, in listening to and hearing, people like you who are close to the team and covering the team on a daily basis, it feels like maybe Steve Kerr is losing or has lost this Warriors locker room. What's your read on the situation?
It's not pretty. There's no doubt about that. And it's turned into a circus. You're absolutely right. I've been talking with like some of my media colleagues about how interesting of a year this has been. And this might be the most interesting, which is really saying something considering the last 10 years of this, quote unquote dynasty, if they're still in it. But in terms of Steve, yeah, it's a circus. There's a lot of drama. There's no doubt about that. And, I honestly forgot to even bring up Chris Paul in tonight's Locked On Warriors and the fact that Woj is reporting he's out 4 to 6 weeks. Look, look, all I can say is Steve Kerr is embattled. There's a lot of people, myself included, questioning his decision making. I don't know if you saw the soundbite from his former player Boogie Cousins a few days ago, where he flat out called for a change in leadership with the Golden State Warriors, or at least the consideration of that. And his argument made sense. I agree. Ultimately for me, look, Steve Kerr has never been, in his 10 years plus years as head coach of the Warriors, he's never developed all-star talent in that entire 10 years. And he's at a point now where he has a couple players that are good enough for him to develop and to work with and to build. And he's instead just doubling down, tripling down on veteran players that are clearly on the downside of their careers. The Andrew Wiggins part of it is the most perplexing without question, simply because he's still 28. He turns 29 years old next month, but he looks like a player who has peaked and who should be retiring after this year. But he's still young, and he's got 3 more years on his contract after this season, so he's not going anywhere. That to me is the number one problem, is the Andrew Wiggins issue, because he's not playing good enough to get any minutes, but Kerr is still sticking with him, and that's affecting the development of players like Kuminga and Moody, and it's a hot mess.
We had the reports coming out about Kuminga, being upset with Steve Kerr, and it's not the first that we've heard of some frustrations with Kerr this season. Klay Thompson has aired some frustrations as well. At this point, Cyrus, I mean, if you're the Warriors, has Steve Kerr earned enough like organizational cachet that, not that he can do whatever he wants, not that he's immune to, any kind of backlash, but just, do you ride it out with Steve Kerr? Do you ride out the end of the big three era, whatever that looks like with Steve Kerr? Or if you're the Warriors, do you maybe start taking those steps organizationally towards setting yourself up for the post Steph Curry era, right? Do you start looking for a different head coach now, somebody that can develop the young talent? Or do you even consider possibly trading some of these, waning superstars to be able to get back some assets to set yourself up, to springboard yourself into the next era of Warriors basketball?
Yeah, it would honestly surprise me if the Warriors didn't pull a trade before the deadline next month. Mike Dunleavy Jr., their GM, alluded to the fact that if the team was still below 500 when Draymond Green came back, that they were going to take action. And that is exactly what's going on right now. In regards to Steve Kerr, I think there's two answers for that, because I can give you my personal answer, which is that, look, Steve Kerr over the last 5 years has been a below 500 head coach. Literally. I think they're a game below 500 at the time of this recording. In terms of his overall record for 5 years. That's half a decade. That's not a small sample size. I know the Warriors won the title in 2022, but look, Frank Vogel won a title. Budenholzer won a title. That was not good enough for them to keep their jobs, because those titles were surrounded by a lot of tumultuous seasons with, underperforming teams. And I feel like Steve Kerr's in a very comparable situation. But like you said, he's earned a lot of good grace with the ownership, with the organization. There's going to be fans that I think no matter what will support him because of the fact he's been the head coach for 4 title teams. So if we're looking at this pragmatically, like realistically in terms of what's actually going to happen, it would shock me if the team took action this season. I don't think we're going to see an in-season change in leadership. But is it called for? I do believe so. And one perfect example of this is Steve Kerr's number one assistant on paper is Kenny Atkinson, who himself is under a lot of scrutiny because he's like their quote unquote defensive coordinator. And since he took over for Mike Brown, the Warriors defense has been abysmal. It's been below average. It has not been up to par in terms of what the Warriors standards are. But Kerr's main assistant coach that is his confidant is his best friend, Bruce Frazier. This is someone that was his teammate at Arizona. This is someone who only got a job in the NBA because Kerr was the GM for the Suns back in the 2000s, and he's technically Stephen Curry's shooting coach. But Steve Kerr now has his best friend as his number one assistant. He's the guy he talks to all the time during the game. And a yes man culture just does not translate to success. That is not what leadership is symbolically representative of. Yet that's what we're seeing right here. So to make this such a long-winded answer, but to summarize, I don't think he's going anywhere, but I certainly do think after this season, especially given he's a lame duck coach, that he probably, if this continues the way it's going, my guess is he'll probably step down to save face, and then we'll see him back in the broadcast booth next year.
Last one here for you, Cyrus. Well, we know we've got Draymond Green kind of coming back into the fold. Hasn't, suspension officially lifted, still working himself back into game shape. So no idea what that's going to look like yet when he steps back onto the basketball court. But the Warriors are losing Chris Paul for at least 4 to 6 weeks with the hand injury. How much of a loss is that for this Warriors team that's already kind of had a bit of a tumultuous season to this point?
The Chris Paul injury, like Chris Paul has been a weird player for the Warriors because he's blended he's blended. He doesn't stick out for the losses or the wins. I've seen a tremendous value in Chris Paul in the sense of the development of players like Jonathan Kuminga and Trace Jackson Davis. Chris Paul is coaching them more than the actual coaches are doing, and you're seeing those two thrive when Chris Paul is on the court playing alongside them. So to me, Chris Paul's value is in what he's doing for these young players. The Draymond Green part of it is crazy for a lot of reasons. For starters, when the suspension first came down, Mike Dunleavy Jr. and Steve Kerr both said that Draymond was going to be around the team, that he was going to be practicing with the team. he has not been around the team once since the suspension started. We have no idea where he's been, what he's been doing. His only appearance was at LeBron James's birthday party. I don't think that was a good look, especially when you consider the fact that he's not ready to play right now. He came back. He's not in playing shape. It's going to take a week or two for him to amp up and get his reps so he can actually play. Why was he not with the team so that he could have started playing today? So there's just a lot going on. And the Chris Paul part of it, if he gets traded, it wouldn't surprise me because of the fact that he's making 30 plus million. It's an expiring deal. It's a perfect asset to make a trade, attach some picks to it so you can get something back. But if he stays, I think there is a lot of value there. And I'm going to throw this idea to you. I haven't even thrown this idea out on the show yet. This is just me just throwing it out, and I'd love to know what you think about this. I honestly think that after this season, if Chris Paul decides to hang it up, I don't know if he wants to keep playing or not, but he's going to turn 39 this year. I think he would be a fantastic candidate to take over as head coach. What do you think?
Of the Warriors?
Yeah.
I think Chris Paul has future head coach written all over him. Absolutely. Whether he does it as a player or whether he comes back and wants to, try to win some titles as a coach, whatever. I think he's absolutely going to be one of those guys. He's going to be in and around the game for the rest of his life. I don't think he's going to like hang it up and step away and be like Jokic and just go tend to his horses out and,
right,
out whatever. That's not going to be the case for Chris Paul. He wants to be around this game forever. So I could absolutely see him doing that, but maybe it will be with the Warriors. Maybe it'll be with another team. Should they move on from Steve Kerr? Does he have enough cachet? Should they ride it out with Kerr, who's been their coach throughout this dynasty era of Warriors basketball? What's it going to look like when Draymond Green steps back onto the court? You're going to have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Warriors. Cyrus, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
It is always a pleasure. Anytime you ask, I'm coming on, brother. Thank you.